Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alex Paul from InvestorStream, and I'll be your host today. Today we have Redbank Copper Executive Director Mike Hannington and Non-Executive Director Bruce Hooper to discuss the upcoming plans for Redbank as well as operational progress. Mike and Bruce will give a short presentation on this progress and will be on hand to address any questions following the presentation. A lot of you have already taken the chance to send through some questions, which is greatly appreciated. But if you feel free to send more questions through, and the way that you can do that is via the chat platform in the question pane in the GoToWebinar control panel. You can also simply email them to me at alex@investorstream.com.au. A lot of you have already taken that chance, and I thank you very much for your proactivity there. You can also download a copy of the presentation by navigating to the handouts pane in the control panel. A copy of the webinar will also be available on Redbank's website and social media platforms later today. But for now, I'd like to throw it over to Mike, who's going to kick things off for us. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Alex, and thank you everyone for attending. Bruce and I are sitting in the Redbank's Perth office. If everyone can see the screen, that is an RC drill rig that was operating out of the Redbank project earlier on this year. Our field season commenced on the 1st of June this year. We had a large project area to explore and a lot of work to complete during the field season. Bruce and I are going to take you through the field work that has been completed, take you through some of the information that we've collected so far and the implications on how we're going in our search for a large copper deposit over the Redbank project. Before we go through all the exploration surveys that we've completed, I just want to recap on corporate overview. As you know, we raised $7.4 million in March. We now have a little over 515 million shares on issue. You can see the graph of our share price. We came back on the ASX on the 15th of September 2020. And since then, our share price has ranged between 6 and 8 cents. It's been up as far as 14. Currently, we're trading at about 4.9 cents. So we have a market capitalization of around $25 million. I just want to go through the team, the board that we have. Back in April this year, we appointed Tony Kiernan as non-exec chairman. Tony has muscle memory on small companies like this and understands how to take a small company through the process of capital raising, exploring, through to the discovery phase. I've spent a career exploring for mainly base metal deposits around the world, and specifically in the last 5 years for copper deposits. Bruce has similar experience. Bruce and I were both at Geopico that turned into North Limited during the 90s. Daryl was one of the directors that helped recapitalize Redbank back in 2019. And Dale Henderson has recently been appointed. Dale is currently the COO of Pilbara Minerals. Right, let's get into the Redbank project. Back in, let's go to slide 4, thank you. Back in 2019, the Redbank project was a little over 1,000 square kilometres of exploration ground around the Sandy Flat mine. When I came on board, the first thing that I needed to do was understand whether this project had the potential to host a large copper deposit. The breccia pipes are well known at Redbank, and really it was trying to understand why are the breccia pipes there. So during 2019 and 2020, we undertook some very basic prospecting where we undertook field mapping and mapped out the rocks at surface around the breccia pipes. The breccia pipes daylight, and there's also a lot of outcrop around there that is copper bearing. So we've done an extensive amount of mapping around the central Redbank project area. And during that time, it started to reveal to us the district scale potential. In mid-2020, we pegged an area that extended from the far western portion of our tenements that we had at that time, which is around where the Calvert Hill station is, all the way to the west, to the MacArthur mine. So now we control an area from east to west that's about 250 kilometres, and from north to south, about 90 kilometres. That's a very large area to explore for a reasonably small company. Back in March, we raised $7.4 million to have a well-funded exploration program for this year, and we've completed a huge amount of work. One of the things that we did at the time that we were planning our exploration was review and recompile all the previous exploration data. And what that enabled us to do was to re-report the JORC resource. So previously the JORC resource had been a 2004 JORC resource. That is now a JORC 2012 resource. That's brought data that was collected in the late 1960s to early 1970s by companies like Newmont Mining into a modern database that is now JORC 2012 compliant. Just about all the drilling that was completed back then was drilling into the breccia pipes. So everything else around those breccia pipes and further afield towards the MacArthur mine are really unexplored. The only people that have traversed that area are Northern Territory Geological Survey geologists, and most of their work has been air photo interpretation with just spot site visits to various outcrops along that area. What we've done to explore is we've used our connections in the industry to put together a team of experienced geologists. So all our geologists except for one have got at least 20 years experience hunting for base metals. So we've got a huge land holding. It's very poorly explored. We've done early mapping to identify surface copper outcrop. And then the next thing that we have to consider is if a surface copper deposit is not exposed at surface, how are we going to find a copper deposit that may be masked by some kind of surface cover? When we go to the next slide, what I want to help show everyone is how we go exploring for these deposits and what kind of success other explorers have had around the world in hunting for the type of system we're trying to find in the MacArthur Basin. Bruce.
Thank you, Mike. Great to talk to you all today. I'd like to give a little bit of background and some understanding on these copper systems and what's driving us with our exploration here at Redbank. Sedimentary coppers produce about 15% of the world's copper. It comes really from two major belts, the Kupferschiefer in Poland and the copper belt in Zambia and the Congo. They've both been producing for over 100 years. Fascinatingly, there's been great success in that copper belt over 120 years since exploration started, with Ivanhoe Mines finding the Kamoa-Kakula deposit, which is 1.7 billion tonnes at 2.5% copper, and will be the second biggest producer within a couple of years now, behind Escondida. So these basins are still being understood, and we've gone a huge way forward in understanding these systems. It's all to do with the fluids carrying the copper, which are oxidized fluids which hit a major reductant. And it's our understanding of how that precipitates out and the traps and the areas to go exploring for that that's led for this new success for both open pitable and underground deposits. And they can be that because they're high grade. So They're very large, very consistent over a large area. They would average over 1.5% copper compared to porphyry coppers, which are probably the major number of those green dots there, which are below 0.5% copper. And those porphyries now are multi-billion dollars to develop. They have huge amounts of tailing, which is difficult to permit and can take decades to approve. We're now looking for where else we can find those major deposits. The Kalahari belt in Botswana and Namibia is turning and developing into a significant producing district with Kuprick and Sandfire developing mines there. Sandfire also looking over in Montana in the Sullivan belt and got high-grade copper deposits there. Back here in Australia, we have the nifty Maroochy Patterson province, which is getting a lot more attention these days. But really the big area is the Northern Territory. And if we go on to the regional look at Northern Territory and Mount Isa, you can see the vast size of that basin. Obviously, the Mount Isa district is well known, well explored over many years, and a major copper producer. MacArthur River is a major zinc producer that's been known for 30 odd years now, and that belt has been explored heavily, certainly in work I've been involved in over time, Borroloola to the north, looking for more zinc under cover. But this area to the south has had very little exploration, and Mike and his team have done a fantastic job to pick up this sort of land holding across that basin. It's got all the hallmarks of a copper province. It's got obviously the known copper at the Redbank breccia pipes, which is a classic example for outflow zones of copper. And using new technologies and new understandings that we've been picking up, this area really ripe to find something big. It's isolated, it hasn't had a lot of work on it previously, and certainly new techniques haven't been used very much. The next slide shows the airborne EM that we've completed this year. It was bloody annoying how late in the season we finally got the results after the survey was completed, but it shows a really fascinating example for the first time in this basin, because never has this broad regional EM been flown over here. And the red blobs there are conductors, and those conductors are a black shale horizon in the exact right setting, just 5 kilometers from the known breccia pipes. And what's important about those conductors is that they're reductants. So as the oxidized fluids come out of the basin, they come up through these outflow zones, being forced up through temperature and pressure. They hit a reductant, which are those red areas, and that's where they precipitate. So most of that is less than 250 meters in depth, generally a flat lying sheet that's only exposed on the margins. And we're now really tackling that area and getting into that. And Mike and the team have really sent most of the effort over the last few months into that area. And I'll hand back to Mike to explain what he's done with the IP on following that up.
Thanks, Bruce. So, interesting field season. The airborne EM started on the 8th of July. That survey was expected to take a little under 2 weeks to complete. Lots of problems operating up there, lots of equipment problems, primarily with the helicopter. The survey was only completed in October. It's only on Sunday, this weekend, that we received the final processed data from the contractor for that airborne EM survey. So never before has this, as Bruce explained, has this type of survey been completed over here, and you'll notice that there is no VTEM conductor around the breccia pipes. What those breccia pipes are really the conduits to allow fluids to escape from lower down in the basin. And those fluids have got a lot of copper in them, which is why they've all precipitated out in those breccia pipes. We believe that that is not the main game. The main game is further out to the east, where we've now located these conductors. What we've then done after identifying these conductors from the daily flight line data that we downloaded off the helicopter is we've sent the IP, so the ground geophysical induced polarization field crews, out onto the ground to complete dipole-dipole IP. What that does is that gives you chargeability information. Now, chargeability data helps you determine whether you can see disseminated sulfides. There's a few other things that a chargeability anomaly will locate, but we know that those conductors are providing us evidence of conductive shales. If you look closely at that diagram, you can see a number of drill holes that were drilled by a company called Gulf Mines in 2008. So in particular, hole 5. So we've looked at that hole. There is some that's right on the edge of that conductor. There is some mineralization in it. We're hunting and proposing drill holes in those conductors and further to the east from where we completed a series of 30 drill holes east of Bluff earlier this year. So we're coming towards the end of the field season, and we're planning drilling, which we may not be able to achieve this field season, but we will be starting at the beginning of the next field season. Let me now take you to the next slide, and I just want to recap what these breccias look like. So what we're doing is we're exploring in a basin that we know has significant amounts of copper in the fluid that has flown through these breccia pipes. Now, it's obviously quite possible for a basin to have lots of fluids that don't have metal in them. The breccia pipes are a perfect indication that we've got copper pregnant fluids flowing very close to those conductors that you saw on the last slide. The way that Redbank has approached exploration is not to go and re-drill those breccia pipes, but to try and consider how we find a bigger system. And one of the data sets that we've been collecting that we will be reporting on in the next couple of weeks is our soil sampling program. So to date, we've collected soil samples over a vast area of our granted tenements at 500 by 500 metre line spacing. A lot of those assay results are currently being reported now and into the next couple of months. We started collecting this data back in June. We're also been completing further prospecting work, and I want to just go to the next slide and talk about the drilling that we've completed to the east of Bluff. So we have assays that are into the lab at the moment. Most of those holes went down a little over 100 metres. At surface, we have a unit called the Gold Creek Volcanics, and beneath that we have the prospective horizon, the Wollagrang Formation, which is a sediment that we believe is the potential host to a large horizontally oriented copper system. We've completed a stratigraphic hole down to 700 metres, and we've confirmed the stratigraphy and confirmed how prospective the Wollagrang Formation is, and another formation beneath it called the Aquarium Formation and the McDermott Formation. So we're pretty comfortable that we understand the geology in that district. So the assay results from that RC drilling that we completed, we expect to be reported sometime in the next month and a half. Now, if we move from the drilling that we've completed to the east of Bluff, and we go all the way to the far west of our tenements, what we've recognised is that the sediments that we're chasing that are 100 metres below surface are actually exposed at surface on the far west of our tenement area. And we have two major structures called the Calvert Fault and the Emu Fault Zone. And close to where those fault systems intersect to the very northwest of our tenement holding is the MacArthur mine, operated by Glencore. But if you go down to the south of our tenements, you'll see some sediments that are exposed. And those sediments, we believe, are the host rocks and prospective for copper mineralisation. So in the last 2 weeks, we've completed a helicopter-supported stream sediment sampling survey, and you can see those blue triangles on the diagram is where we've collected stream sediment samples. And then you can also see the black dots where we've absolutely hammered those sediments that are exposed at surface with soil samples. Now, the reason we have to have helicopter support there is there are no tracks. There's no station tracks. There's no fences. It may appear that we're pretty close to the MacArthur mine, but within kilometres of that MacArthur mine, there is literally no way of accessing that ground other than taking a helicopter. So we're pretty excited that we're starting to reveal an area that prior to our exploration was complete virgin exploration grounds. Now, the reason that those sediments are known is because there have been Northern Territory Geological Survey geologists that have been there. They've actually mapped those sediments, so we know that they're present. We've confirmed them with the work we've done, and we've submitted soil samples, and we will expect the results back sometime in the new year. So late January, early February, we'll get the first results of that program. So an active program both to the east of the Redbank breccia pipe hosted copper deposits, and also we've completed some work further out to the west. In conjunction with the exploration work, what we've done is we've set up the Redbank project for future years exploration. And we've refurbished the Redbank airstrip, so that is now available for aircraft to land on that airstrip. We've also refurbished the exploration camp. So we currently have 20 rooms occupied by various geophysical ground crews, our soil sample crew, our geologists. That's easily expandable up. We've got a core cutting facility there for our diamond core, and we will be occupying that camp all year round. So thank you very much for listening. Very interesting completion of this year's program. We still have our geologists out at site. The wet hasn't yet started. We are hoping to secure another RC drill rig to drill some targets over the conductors. So the season hasn't ended yet, but we think we've made a very good start to evaluating and narrowing down copper targets over a very large tenement holding.
Yeah, and the results are going to be coming in, the geochemical results over the next few months, and that's going to put a great story together on where we're going to find the next one.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Bruce. Great presentation. Now, look, we've had a few questions that have come through over the course of the presentation. I guess we'll start with probably the more broader one to start, Mike, if we can. Can you just summarise the key outcomes from this field season? In layman's terms, what went right and what went wrong for you?
I'll just close off on what went wrong. Let me get rid of that quickly. Normally when you explore, you look at a big area and you try and narrow it down bit by bit, because what you're trying to do is find the best target that you can drill. And ordinarily, you would go out and complete an airborne EM survey, find these conductors, do some IP, some soil sampling over the top, and then drill them. If the VTEM survey had been completed in the timeline that we believed it could have been done, we would have seen those results at the end of July, beginning of August. And we would have been able to plan to drill those VTEM conductors out to the east of the breccia pipes sometime in September, October, and into November. We haven't had the luxury of that, so the drilling of those conductors will primarily have to be done next year. So that is a negative. The success side is some of the results that we've got from the ground IP survey work. Now, this is something that we've reported in a light way because we're still evaluating it, but we have coincidence chargeability anomalies over the top of the VTEM conductors. What we're looking for when we're exploring is coincident anomalies from different techniques that help add confidence to our drill targets. So we have not only the conductors, we've got chargeability anomaly, and some of the conductors also have copper anomalies on surface, where that spent fluid has got a little bit of copper left in it, and we're assaying it at the surface. So we've got three things that are helping us narrow in on our targets. Bruce, have you got anything you want to add on?
No, look at exciting new results just 5 kilometres away from copper deposits, and that's just been a great new discovery through the year, really.
Yeah.
So, Mike, Bruce, what is the significance of having so many breccia pipes scattered across your land holding, and why haven't you drilled these yet?
Yeah, so the breccia pipes contain significant copper, and it's over a big broad area, and we really look at these as the outflow zones. So those are giving us a finger and a direction for where the fluids and the copper is coming from and moving to, and we're looking for the big one. And so we think they're giving us a fantastic target directions to look for at the flat-lying major copper deposits rather than just these outflow zones.
So the amazing thing about these breccia pipes on Sandy Flat and Bluff, each one of them contains about 30,000 tonnes of contained copper in them. So they're significant, small but significant copper deposits in themselves. But for the explorer, what they do is they give us a window into why you've got copper that are in these breccia pipes. And we know from what we see in these breccias, because the copper is hosted all within the matrix of them, that they've come in via a fluid that is invaded into rock that has already been bashed up and crackled up. So that copper in the fluid has come from somewhere. So you don't get fluid like that focusing all its energy into just those breccia pipes. There would have been a huge amount of fluid, and if it had passed over a reductant that is 5 kilometres by 5 kilometres in area or more, there is the potential for copper to have dropped out in those reductants in much, much larger quantities than we see in those existing breccias. Now, the only reason those breccias have been discovered and followed up is because they daylight at surface.
And historically, that's where all the effort has been. So we're really not wanting to repeat what's been done before and where all of these close space drilling have been done. We're looking to use that understanding from that to look for something bigger.
Thanks, Bruce. So Redbank has embarked on an extensive soil sampling program. Why has there been such a large focus on this, and what is the significance of soil sampling in this region?
Yeah, great question, and it may not seem that sexy, soil sampling, but it actually gives the indication here that we've got shallow mineralization. You can do soil sampling. We're not working undercover, but the lack of regional work that's been done across this basin, when we pulled everything together, there isn't been that sort of first level prospecting. And in fact, as Mike pointed out, with our work to the west, we're taking stream sediment sampling. That's the very first prospecting tool that we ever use when we get to a new province somewhere else in the world. It's all generally been done in Australia across outcropping areas. But it hasn't been done here, and it gives you an understanding of how limited the previous work has been. So we have a chance that any of those stream sediment samples will directly locate outcropping mineralization. So when those results come through, we'll be really keen to see what they do, because there's potential that there on surface is copper mineralization.
Thanks, Bruce. Now, you alluded to it in an earlier slide, but on a global scale, how does the McArthur River region compare to other world-class copper jurisdictions? And do you expect to see further interest from major miners in this region?
Yes, I think we're already seeing that. BHP have done an interesting joint venture with Encounter. There are a number of other major groups. Teck have been exploring this basin for a while. Up until now, this part has only had small copper, but there are deposits found. But obviously to the east, through the Mount Isa district, there's significant copper. And so what we're trying to do is find the new belt, really, and we'll do it by following up outcropping copper around known deposits, and move out through to a regional thing. And I think there are a number of companies that are now understanding the potential of Australia to be one of the major next sedimentary copper belts. Mike?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Redbank's done is capture an opportunity, and it's a grassroots opportunity. The JORC resource shows that we've got a little under 100,000 tonnes of contained copper in those breccia pipes, but what is hard to quantify right now is what is the opportunity to find multiples of that metal in the exploration ground that we've captured. And the work that we've just started doing this field season is the first step to try and narrow our exploration down so that we can target drilling to try and find big copper systems. So there's a number of the government organisation, the Government Geological Survey, Geoscience Australia. There's a number of large companies that understand the prospectivity here. Part of Redbank getting into this district was opportunistic, because when back in 2019 we were really a very small tenement holder here. It's just that we've expanded the tenement holding to a much larger size at just the right moment when the copper world is waking up to the prospectivity of these sediment-hosted stratiform copper systems. And you can see that quite clearly by Kamoa-Kakula in Zambia that Bruce mentioned, the Kalahari copper belt opening up, and there's a lot of work occurring in North America as well for these sediment-hosted copper systems. So the majors that are hunting for copper deposits are maybe not so fast in their ability to peg ground, but they're definitely playing catch up, looking very seriously, forming copper exploration teams to explore these basins for these next set of tier one copper deposits that we need to find over the next 20, 30 years to supply copper into the electrifying world.
Thanks, Mike. So the second round of drill targets around the Bluff deposit was mentioned as the next immediate targets of the RC drill campaign. Is this underway, or did the late time conductor to the east become the priority before the wet season?
Yeah, no, the late time conductor became the priority. The RC rig that we had out there just didn't have the ability and to get technical with the amount of air pressure on the hammer to drill to the depth we wanted it to drill. We've got another RC rig that's got the capability to do that, but it's not at site at the moment. That rig is actually reined in on another project. We were hoping to have that rig mobilised, but currently we do not have a rig mobilised to drill that target.
So obviously the area to the east is quite large, and the dipole results will help to find targets. Can you just talk us through what the geo's theory is with regards to mineral migration, and will this area become the focus for the company for the 2022 campaign?
Yeah, it'll certainly be a significant part of it, though we're really still got potential beneath the breccia pipes on the drilling that we've been doing, and we're looking forward to the results from that. We'll also be looking forward to the results from all of the soil and stream sediments that we hope will give some high priority targets. But, you know, it is an exciting new understanding of this area to the east, which we've got from the VTEM survey and the follow-up with the IP. So there'll be lots to do if we can, hopefully this year, but certainly into next year.
Obviously, you've spoken at length of how truly unexplored this region is. Are you assaying for any other minerals besides copper?
Yes, I'll let Mike.
Yeah, so it sounds very basic to every 500 metres to put a kilo of soil that's at surface into a bag and send it off to the assay lab. That sounds easy. It's actually not that easy because a lot of the country is quite rough, and there are no tracks in most of this area. So you've either got to walk the ground or get to it with a motorbike. After that, things get very high tech. So what we're doing is we're assaying for 48 elements, and within those 48 elements, there's a particular suite of elements that we look for that help us understand whether we have a copper pregnant system there. So we have what we call a hydrothermal fluid that's flowed through the rock, and as Bruce has explained, that fluid comes from deep within the sedimentary basin. It stripped all the copper out of the volcanic sills, volcanic formations that have intruded into that basin, and it's held the copper in the fluid that's gone down to the bottom of the basin, and then via heat and pressure, it gets pushed up higher into the basin via faults. And what we're looking for is a larger footprint of that. And by doing this kind of soil sampling, we home in on the large footprint that helps us then narrow down to the target that we're going to drill.
And we might find a zinc deposit or a diamond project or any other things. When you're the first people out into the area doing 48 elements, gives you all sorts of other things that you never quite expected. So, you know, it's a high quality exploration team and effort with modern technology that really is at the forefront of exploration. So
there have been issues meeting timelines this year, and you've acknowledged that in the presentation, including obviously the release of the updated JORC, the delays in the VTEM survey due to helicopter issues, drill rig issues, breakdowns, and rig availability as well. Noting the amount of data which was collected, organised and analysed, and the difficulties posed by the remoteness in the ground, how does the company plan to ensure issues are minimised over the next 12 months?
That's probably a question that has lots of answers to it. The first thing you do is make sure that you've got an exploration camp, a base that you can work from. that you've got an ability to get field personnel out to site, into the project and out of the project as easily as possible. It means that you've got to know the local pastoralists and the traditional owners, and you've got to be pretty comfortable about the techniques that you're using to hunt down for these big copper systems. So we believe that the work we've done this year is all started to make future field seasons a lot more effective in how we target. Bruce?
But I don't think we should ignore how much work and how much good work has actually been achieved through this season. We've had diamond rigs, RC rigs, VTEM surveys, IP surveys, 2 soil crews out, stream sediment helicopter supported crews, redone the camp, redone the airstrip. You know, there's actually been a fantastic amount of work and good work that's been done this year. So there have been some delays, but all in all, it's been an incredibly successful exploration effort out there from a really good team.
Has there been an evolution of Geoscience Australia's research lab contours or application of that research that would provide greater confidence of copper deposits on the Redbank tenement?
Geoscience Australia has moved on from that early work. That was 4 years worth of work they did as part of Exploring for the Future 1.0. They moved on to 2.0. Part of that work revealed an area between Tennant Creek and Mount Isa, and there's been multiple companies that have pegged that ground. The other area, obviously, was between the Redbank project on the Northern Territory Queensland border out to MacArthur River, and only one company pegged that ground, us. So we've really captured an entire sub-district of the MacArthur Basin, whereas the other area that Geoscience Australia highlights has probably got 15 companies that have pegged that ground. So it's just a matter of numbers. There's 15 companies that are promoting their activity and how clever they were to peg that ground. What we've really done is, because the area that we pegged had no prior data over it, there's not much point in talking too much unless you've got some data to report on to help you narrow down where you're going to search, because we're keenly aware that we're a small exploration company and every exploration dollar counts. So we want to make sure that we're really targeting where we spend our money. And when you start bringing drill rigs in, that's when the costs start going up. So we need to make sure that all this preparatory work that we're doing is getting us into the right spots to do the drilling.
So to effectively put a drill hole into this area would be roughly $1 million, and it appears that there's no budgeted spend for this asset. So what's the intention going forward? Obviously, it is in a highly sought after jurisdiction. So is there any plans to sell or JV?
So Alex, you're talking about the Millers Creek project in South Australia, which is a project that we've openly said that we're not going to actively spend shareholders' money on that project. That was a project that was opportunistically pegged by Redbank back in late 2018. Yes, we are open to a partner, a joint venture partner, or someone that may want to purchase the project. We believe for Redbank shareholders, best bang for our buck is out of the Redbank project in the Northern Territory. We understand that the Millers Creek project is right in between 2 other majors that are exploring in South Australia for IOCG, iron oxide copper gold deposits, and that they and some others are probably better suited to manage and finance exploration through what's called the Elizabeth Creek Fault Zone better than Redbank is. So we've made a conscious decision to not actively spend large amounts of our money. We've kept the tenements in good standing. and we've done a very small amount of work, and we're open to any joint venture partner or group that wants to acquire that project.
Will the diamond tails that were discussed in the recent release be drilled after the VTEM target or in parallel?
They'll be drilled in parallel with it. So once you've got a rig on site, you just use it as much as you can to cover off on everything that you need to do. Part of the drilling that we did east of Bluff with the RC rig, like I said before, it just didn't have enough air at the end of the hammer to be able to penetrate as deep as we wanted to do in the Wallagrang formation. So there are absolute follow-up targets where we've got some good indications of mineralisation in the drilling that we want to follow up on by re-entering some of those RC holes and either continuing with a bigger RC rig or with diamonds tails on the end.
So when would the 2022 field season likely begin, and would that be straight into drilling given all the geochemical and geophysics that you've already completed this year?
I love being able to predict the weather. This season we started on the 1st of June. I expect that it's probably a similar time frame, but given I'm saying that, the camp will be occupied all during the wet season. So if we get a break in the wet, and sometimes you're actually able to get out to site in March, you get a break in the wet and you can actually get stuck in earlier. So we're really primed that as soon as we get a break in the wet, we can be out there again. I mean, we own our own IP, ground, geophysical equipment. It's not like we're beholden on a contractor. If we can secure a drill rig early that's close by, then we will be back into drilling those conductors.
And when are you likely to release the results from the recent drilling program?
When the assay results come in. So we use an assay lab, Intertech. They've got a big lab in Perth. The samples get transported to a prep lab in Townsville, where the samples are prepped. The subsample then gets flown to Perth and gets put through the assay instrument in Perth. And currently there's a backup with assaying out of the Perth lab of about 8 weeks.
It's a problem for the whole industry at the moment, and it's become a really significant issue for return of assay results. Yeah, we're not orphans on that one.
So how long do you expect to halt drilling activity during the wet season?
As Mike said, it's, we hope to still get the rig in there now, as we still haven't had rain, and it'll be when the wet season ends. So in the order of 6 months.
Thanks, Bruce. Now, we've got 2 more questions to get through, and then we'll probably call it quits. How much more are you expecting to invest in drilling and development this financial year?
It depends totally on getting the drill rig access. We'll get that drill rig. If we can get it, we'll drill these exciting targets as soon as possible.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question of how much money we're going to deploy to drilling. We've got the targets. They're clear, compelling targets to drill. We're going to properly assess them. They're not 1, 2 drill hole targets. They're 20, 30 drill hole targets. So we're not going to just do a very light program here. We think we've got a technique that homes us in, and we're going to make sure we properly evaluate it with the drill rigs.
Thanks, Mike. And just a bit of a hypothetical to finish, if I can. In the event that a large deposit of copper is delineated, similar to the nearby MacArthur mine, what would be the time taken to build the infrastructure and the concentrators, thereby enabling the full exploitation of such a deposit?
Yeah, look, I've been with Sandfire recently. We managed to get the DeGrussa deposit into production within 18 months and for first concentrate within 2 years. There were lots of fantastic advantages on that, especially with infrastructure location, high grade, shallow oxidized chalcocite blanket. So that would be the shortest. This area is a little bit more remote, but actually the infrastructure for a mine is perfect here. There's bitumen roads, there's ports nearby. There really is many advantages of having a major mine in this sort of area, and compared to many parts of the world. Obviously, native title and those are other things that need to be dealt with in Northern Australia. So, it's hard to say, but the fastest it really can be done is within 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Mike. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you all for joining me and submitting your questions. And I'd also like to thank both Mike and Bruce for presenting and taking the time to answer some questions. As I mentioned before, a recording of the webinar will be on Redbank's website and social media platforms later today. Mike, before I let you go, do you have any final comments to leave with us today?
Well, I'd just like to thank everyone that's online. Thank you for everyone for following the story. It's as an explorer, it's a fascinating project, and it is actually fast evolving, as Bruce described. I'm looking forward to seeing what results come out of this assaying. So thank you for everyone for following the story.
Thanks, Mike. Bruce, before we go, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you for listening. Exciting times. Be looking forward to the results coming through.
Fantastic. Well, that wraps it up for us here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Bruce. Like I said, the webinar will be on Redbank's website and social media platforms later today, so keep an eye out for that. But thanks to everyone for attending, and have a great day.